We are live. All right. Welcome to Goddess Vibrations, the sexual, spiritual empowerment show. I am here with my sister goddess and guest today, Heather. And Heather she does a lot of things. I will let her introduce herself in a minute, but we are going to talk about how to tell the truth about your desires and relationships. And I want you all to know the reason why I invited her on is she did a really amazing post, I don't know, a few weeks back, maybe a month or so ago, where she was talking about when she goes on a first date, she just lets it all hang out and she's her authentic self. And sometimes people don't like that, but she's okay with that because that sort of weeds them out. And I was reading that post like, wow, I wish everybody would do that because I've wasted so much time, conversations, dates, even full-blown relationships for months. And then you come to find out that that person is not who they said they were. They're trying to figure out who I wanted and then become that, because they just wanted to see what it would be like to date me or to have sex with me or to be, in a relationship or try this lifestyle or try this or get healthier or get therapy or whatever else. And I think what was really beautiful about your post too is that it's like, gosh, you know what? It's not our responsibility when somebody doesn't show up as their authentic self. If we got duped or fooled or whatever else, there's certain red flags that you can pay attention to, but you never really know until you know. So when you know, then you do something about it. And I think we could all just be a lot happier if we were ourselves.
Very true.
Yeah. So go ahead and introduce yourself and what you do, the kind of work that you do. Let the people know. And I'm going to adjust my screen here while you do that.
Awesome. So my name is Heather Ray Dawn, and I'm a relationship and intimacy coach for couples. And I'm also an empowerment and pleasure coach for women. I teach a number of different kinds of classes, anywhere from communication to different styles of massage for pleasure, for therapeutic reasons, for healing, for pleasure, to even combining kink and sacred sexuality together. I've been a relationship and intimacy coach and teacher for 19, 20 years now. And it's been such a joy and a pleasure to be supporting people for so long. And last month I went to my next level and created a new video on Yoni massage for couples, and women can use it as well to support themselves in healing. And it's like so beautiful. So
thank you for bringing that up. I purchased the video, pre-ordered. And I'm very excited to dive in. I'm ready. We'll just say that. But it really, like I was saying before we went live, it does feed into next week's topic, which is all about orgasmic energy, and especially that orgasmic energy that we cultivate ourselves as women, in solo practice or all the many ways. You and I have been on the path for a while of cultivating this energy, helping others with this. Just today, I had a new aha. I'm really into astrology, that I have Jupiter in the 8th house, which is sex, death, transformation. It's all the Scorpio stuff. Jupiter expands, those things. And it said in there, you could actually have quite a bit of money or earn quite a bit of money or be wealthy in this lifetime. Hasn't happened yet, but I'm only halfway through life. So we still have some time. But I thought about it and I was like, what is wealth? It's second chakra. It's your sexual energy. It's your orgasmicness and being able to turn the pilot light up and down at will. Some people are just born with a bunch and it's overflowing and it's like, here, you have some, but to really be able to turn it up or turn it down. And I think people that have really truly mastered abundance, and I'm not going to say just financial, but abundance in all ways, are the people that are very skilled at turning it up when they need to. And then maybe not turning it down, but being like, okay, when it's down, or maybe it is turning it down so that people, you're safe, you're protected. People aren't trying to get something from you in certain situations. So I think that's all, it's all tied in. And that is what I do.
I have a different relationship with the chakras. Money is the first chakra. which is where your tailbone is and your anus is. Your second chakra is your sexual chakra. And your first chakra, that's your grounding. It's your stability. It's the thing that roots you down into Mother Earth. It's the thing that, you know, when your world gets rocked and you feel unstable, it's because of what's going on in your first chakra. The second chakra supports, it's right next to it, supports with the creativity, and it brings it alive and stuff like that. It's actually what helps manifest it, but it's actually comes from the first chakra in my studies.
Well, yeah, also it aligns with astrology too, because the first 6 houses, so the first house would be Aries, right? And that's again, like that first chakra or the support. Second house is Taurus, which is, it takes it to a deeper level, which can, you know, and then when you start over, so the 8th house is actually, that's like kind of like mirrors the second house. So that's why like Taurus and Scorpio are opposites, right? It's kind of like the second house all over again, but on the other end of the spectrum. So it's interesting how, you know, even the astrological signs match up with the chakras, or at least, you know, I know there's more chakras. Some people say 11, 12 even, or infinity, but there's more chakras than probably houses. But yeah, very interesting how it all aligns. So tell us a little bit about being your authentic self, what maybe letting it all hang out in your work with couples, because you've been working with couples, singles for a long time. Who do you think has a harder time with this, being authentic, men or women?
I think it depends on a lot of things. I think it depends on how they were raised. It's not a male, female, yin yang thing. I think a lot of women, I talk to a lot of women and they think they need to present themselves a certain way. Certain, you know, and it's like certain men feel like they need to present themselves a certain way because of the way they were raised. I would say it probably leans a little bit more towards women, but at the same time, it's like, we were, you know, raised to impress, to be pretty, to, you know, possibly put our makeup on, our hair and all this stuff, and to not get angry and not to show this emotion or that emotion. And when we do our inner work and realize like we can just be ourselves and the person will like us for who we are, it shifts everything. But you know, we have to get to a point of awareness to go, can I show up in cut off jeans and a t-shirt and know that I'm okay? And if he doesn't like it, oh, well, or him, you know, stuff like that. Or, you know, it's like so many people have an image of like, this is exactly what I'm looking for. And they don't look outside that image. And then that shifts everything. So it's like, everybody's trying to present, most people are trying to present a certain image so they can bring in, to seduce, to call in this certain kind of person. But when most women or men, when I look at them over the long term, I'm like, can you imagine the long term being with this person you have in your mind? You know, it means you're always going to be, you know, like if a man really wants to be with a woman who is always dressed up and always in heels and always with makeup, are they going to be willing to be waiting for her to get ready all the time, or her have to get up an extra hour to get ready? Most men, they don't like waiting. It's like, but if you went with somebody who did that, you're going to have to be waiting, or you're going to have to get the alarm. And there's just so many different aspects and avenues of looking at what you think you want and looking at what you do want. And then also how, you know, do you really want to present yourself some way, and then gradually over the next 6 months, unravel who you presented yourself as the first month, because sometimes that's really hard. What if I tell him that this, or I went through this traumatic thing, or what if I told him that I eat this kind of food, or what if I told him I watched that TV show? What if I, you know, or, you know, what if I told her I don't make, you know, 6 digits? What if I told her I didn't, you know, but I have to have the suit and I have to have the tie and I have to look this certain way, when really I see so many couples that said, I would never have thought I would have married that person. If you would have laid them out on in a group, in a dating app, anything, I would have said, no way. But as I got to know him, I realized he was it, because they got to know the personality instead of all the checklists. And they realized that person is what they needed opposed to what they wanted. And there's a huge difference between want and need.
And there's a huge difference between what people say and what they do. Not everybody is aligned and embodied in that way. So they might say they do these things or want this, but they haven't actually stepped into that version of themselves or that desire of themselves yet.
And that is for us individually to tap into our intuition to go, does this feel in alignment? Because a lot of times we second guess ourselves. Like somebody says, oh, I love meditating. I'm a vegan or a vegetarian, or I'm or they don't say anything. It's like, and you just think that they're X, Y, and Z. And the person lets you believe that, even if you may or may not have talked about it. It's like I had an ex-boyfriend years ago that he never told me he was a vegetarian. We would go out to meals and he's like, oh, can we just get a vegetarian dish and a meat dish? I'm like, sure. He would eat both. I found out 2 years later, he was a vegetarian.
Wow.
After we'd broken up. And it's like, he never told me that, it's just like, but it's like, I also knew certain things about his personality that I was questioning whether or not I could live with. Like I knew he, because I asked the right questions. People are so scared of asking questions, afraid they're going to scare the person off. I'm always asking questions. I'm curious. And those questions keep me out of trouble. And so what happened is I knew that he had an issue with lying about the little things, not the big things. And it's like, I'd catch him in these teeny tiny little lies. And I'd be like, why are you doing this? It's like, I don't know. I have so much, I don't know. He couldn't even tell me. I finally had to name it. I'm like, yeah, you have shame? He's like, yeah, I have a shame. Oh my God, it would have taken me hours to tell you that I have a shame. But it's like, ask the questions, find out and feel into the person to see if they're speaking the truth. Oh, you like meditation? Great. How often do you meditate a day? For how long? Oh, well, I probably meditated. Well, I want to meditate. Well, that tells you something. The body language, they're not looking at you, their body kind of does weird things. And that's telling you something. And it's for you to listen and then ask more questions.
Yeah, I think, what you were saying earlier about, oh, I don't want them to know this about me, or what if they find out this? I think I'm at that age in my life where there's really no dark shadows or corners that I'm ashamed or afraid of somebody knowing. It's more like, oh, wait till he finds out about this side of me, like he doesn't know what he's getting into. And that's primarily what I'm thinking, especially if you've only been on one date with somebody or 2 dates and like, oh man, you're like my dream woman. And it's like, how can you possibly know? You can't, because yes, asking the right questions, yes, turning, listening to your intuition, but also sometimes it just takes time and being in different scenarios. I was in a marriage for 8 years and I didn't fully see the person I was married to and had 2 children with, because there was always a lot of distance that he created to put between us and to avoid that intimacy. And so you can't always know. I guess what I want people to gather as they're watching this is not to blame themselves for having been in these situations where somebody isn't what they thought originally, because there's another process that's going on, which I feel obligated to speak about, being a licensed marriage and family therapist, and that's the projection process. And we are always projecting all of the time what we think we see, or what we want to see. I was at a workshop a few days ago and we did a sensory experiment, and I was blindfolded, and my partner had to like use 2 objects to to engage with my senses and to kind of like bring about this feeling of anticipation and surprise and see how I handled that, right? And what she originally did was the 2 items were rosemary and ice. when she put the ice on my wrist, which was kind of her so that it wasn't too much of a shock, I did not recognize it as ice. I thought it was lotion. I just could feel that there was something kind of liquidy. And then I felt drips on my foot, which was underneath my wrist. And I was like, what on earth is dripping on me? I still did not recognize it as ice. And it wasn't until later on when she put it on my neck that I was like, oh, like I jumped, and then I recognized it as ice, right? And it was really amazing to me. And then the rosemary too, she originally put that under my nose, but I didn't smell it. It wasn't until I felt the texture of it in the palm of my hand that I could tell it was in its shape, that it was rosemary. So I thought it was some kind of perfume. And so it was interesting for me to be shown that my perceptions are not always as accurate as I think they are, because there's a projection involved in how we sense the world based on our prior data or information or experiences, right? And so to always just stay curious, stay curious, stay curious, stay curious, right? And yeah, a really powerful experience. So what advice do you have? What other?
First of all, I want to back up because you said something about blame and then you went into projection.
Mhm.
And I have a huge distinction between blaming oneself and taking responsibility. It's like, no, don't blame yourself. Blame yourself because it's a beating yourself up, which is a not a healthy thing. But it's taking responsibility for the parts that you can take responsibility for. There's so much anger and breakups because nobody was willing to take responsibility. It doesn't mean let's blame the self. Let's take responsibility that I saw this a long time ago. Women take months, if not years, to break up with somebody, to split up. They know years, months ahead of time that it's not working because of X, Y, and Z. And then they take that long and they say, I've wasted this many years on this person, when really the last 3 years you knew it wasn't going to work. So that's where we can take responsibility. I take responsibility that I knew it was over a long time ago, and I could have only given him 5 of those years instead of 8, you know. And yeah, so that's one thing. It's like taking this is why when I talk to people about communication, it's so vital to like, what can you take responsibility for that is not theirs, you know? And then the projection, yeah, it's like we're always like, while we're listening to somebody, we have all these filters that say, you know, oh wait, I heard this, wait. And that's and then it's like, then you have to distinguish, did you really hear that? Or did some filter grab it, twist it around, and then make it something else? And it's like, we have to really be mindful of like, you know, that's why one of the communication practices I do, I have people like, you have to repeat back what the person says, because so many times when we're doing that, the person says something different and the other person has to say whether or not that was correct. And they're like, that's not totally correct. This is what I actually said. And it's like, our listening is so different. And, you know, our senses, when we have the sight taken away, different senses are heightened, and we're trying to like find like, what is this? Wait a second, it's curious. And like, and yeah, there is some interesting thing. I've never looked at it as projection, but it's when we take away one sense, all the other ones get heightened, but we don't always necessarily know exactly what that thing is. I've done that practice like I don't know how many times, and people are like, that was a strawberry? Really? I didn't know that until it was going down my throat and the juices were there. I'm like, yep. You know, I would have never guessed. And it's like, it's kind of fun. I mean, I like doing that for waking up the senses more than distinguishing projections, but that's this is a different way of looking at it.
Well, and I guess that's related to blaming the self or staying away from that and moving more into the present and the future, is like knowing that projection is a natural human process. You can't really get out of it. The idea is to be aware that we're always projecting. So as long as we're aware that we're always projecting, that does help us take some responsibility for, even like, we're like, whoa, that person didn't show up authentically. Is that fully true? Or is it also true that we saw something else that we wanted to see, right? And we just were like, no, this is what I think they are, you know, and that's what we wanted to see. So that's what we kept reinforcing. And I think in my case, in my marriage, I was really big into narrative theory, creating the story, you know, it's like creating the story of what you want. And so I was like, oh, he's this, or he can do this, or it's this. And then at a certain point, I had to be like, pew, pew, pew. Like, no, he's never going to be that. Like, you're the only one doing the work. So for me, like, my distinction in, is a relationship going to change? Because we can think and perceive in a certain moment, in a certain context or a certain storm, that this relationship isn't going to work. But we do second guess ourselves because there's two people, there's two dynamics involved. And how can we be absolutely 100% certain that that can't shift? The only way that I've known in my own personal experiences and helping couples through, or helping individuals through relationships, is that you know it's not going to work with 100% certainty when you're the only one showing up to do the work, right? And that's just kind of like the only no-brainer one that I can offer people. But I feel like there's so many other things that, you know, they can be in flux. And I guess just like that checklist that you have for all the qualities that you want in your ideal partner, sometimes those checklists don't work, even for like, he should do this, or he should be kind, or he should this, what's he do? You know, I have a friend, a therapist also, who wrote a book on this, about how to find your perfect match. And she divorced her husband after, you know, releasing the book. It's not always, it doesn't always work, right? It's interesting that way.
Well, the lists only go so far, and then you have to work with the personality that goes with it.
Yeah.
You know, the fact is, like, I see a lot of people. So it's funny because, like, when you get into the science of the male brain and the female brain, or the masculine brain and feminine brain, the masculine typically meets a woman and he wants her to be exactly who she is, who he's met, and doesn't want her to change because he's comfortable. He loves her. Then what happens is that women look at a man and go, I want him, but let me see, I can fix this and this and this. We need to change this and this and this. And they don't look at only exactly who he is. They look at his possibility of what he could change into. And that's where things start getting really hairy, is the men don't want women to change. And the women are typically always wanting to change. And the women are wanting the man to change and think he'll shift and change. And they're not accepting the man for exactly who he is. And so then there's a conflict. And so when I'm coaching couples, when I'm working with them, it's like I'm getting them to ask each other really deep, intimate questions of like, what are their wants? What are their desires? What are their needs? What are they really feeling? Getting tapped really into what are they feeling? What are they needing right here, right now? What are they needing to hear from their partner? What are they missing out from their partner, not knowing that their partner is doing X, Y, and Z to show them they love them, but the other person's not seeing it, because then that goes into love language and that goes into different areas and stuff like this. And so there's a lot of things, like if you don't give somebody their love language, they're always going to think that they're starving. They're always going to feel like they're starving, even though you've given them the other 4 love languages completely. But if you haven't given them their primary, they're always going to feel like they're not loved. And you have to find that out. So I'm breaking down love languages with them. And I'm breaking all of this stuff down. And so, especially when somebody's before they're married, it's really beautiful to like kind of come in and like really get clear on what they're both wanting. I had a couple of years ago come to me, and she, you know, she came in and she says, I want a baby. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I want to travel the world. And she was just like, I don't want to travel the world. I want to have a baby. Mm-hmm. And it's like, and it's just like the progress of like working that out and finding out she didn't know certain things about him that in my mind, I'm like, you didn't know that? And he never knew she wanted to have a baby. They worked it out. We sat there and talked it out through like a few sessions until they figured out a win-win for both of them. And it was like so beautiful, and it worked. Mm-hmm. She got what she wanted. He got what he wanted. And all of a sudden it was like, boom, everything exploded open. But they would have never gotten there if certain questions weren't asked, if the space wasn't held, if they didn't really get truthful with themselves and be able to share that with their partner. And they weren't even married. I don't think they ever got married, but they kept the partnership going for, I don't know, they might still be together now. This was like 15 years ago, but it's like so amazing when they have a baby. Yes. Beautiful baby girl. But it's amazing to like have everything, ask the right questions so you can get what you want. And even in dating, it's like being your authentic self, being in that scary place of like, I'm going to share something really vulnerable, having that all show up, or be your goofy self, your silly self, your serious self, the person that cries, the person that's very intense, having all those sides show up. Like I tell people, like, it's something that I just did naturally. I don't know where it came from, but in the first 6 weeks of my, most people's first 6 weeks are all about the honeymoon and making love all the time and finding different positions and and all this stuff. For me, the first 6 weeks is like, I'm going to show you my full and complete self. If you can handle it, then after 6 weeks, everything gets so much easier because you've already seen all of my crap. And then what happens, like with one of my exes, then as soon as I was done, and about a week later, he realized like, oh, she's totally peaceful now. She's totally like herself in a different capacity because she's shown me everything. Then he went through his process. And then it's like, after he went through his process, then we came together and we already knew all of each other's junk, our shadow side, our stories, our history, you don't know everything, but you know the stuff that bothers you on the surface and a little deeper. And then it's like, all you have to do is like, then work out how to work those together. And then you go forward. But most people are so busy hiding those things until 6 months in, then you don't know who you're dating. And then it's like, now you just wasted 6 months of your life being somebody you're not, that person, doesn't want to live with. Like, if you want children, you really should be dating somebody that wants children. Like, if I'm swiping on an app, if you're swiping on a dating app and you don't want kids and you see somebody wants kids, swipe left. Don't do that. That's non-negotiable.
Or just be, and just be authentic about what you're on that app for. I posted something about that in my story this past week. It's like, if you just want a friend to talk to, you want a pen pal, you want sex, you want companionship, it's just like, be freaking honest. You have a better chance of getting it, but I think most men, especially, they think they're going to get a smack in the face if they say they just want this, or they just want that, or they're just looking for this. But, we want to know.
Yeah. And women forget to ask. Like, I've talked to so many women that are on the dating apps and they go, I can't ask him. I'll wait until I meet him and then I'll ask him what he's done there for. I'm like, why are you wasting either one of yours time? Yeah. I always ask, what do you want here for? If it doesn't say in the bio, and a lot of times I'll ask anyway, because the fact is, like, what they say in a bio and what they'll say, in a message privately, sometimes it's completely different. Oh, I'm really looking for a booty call. Like, great. I'm not your girl.
Yeah.
Thank you for being, and I always thank them because men want to be appreciated. And it also encourages them to tell the truth more instead of beating them up for like, oh, you want that? Ew. It's like, they want what they want. Just like what you want is what you want. Ask the questions that are important before you meet, even though I will say there's many times that I've worked with couples that it's like, they weren't looking for a relationship. They were looking for, and they started out as sex buddies and it grew into, they were definitely life partners. And that could be the case. But most time when somebody is saying something, I say, believe them.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting what you say about the masculine feminine brain, because that really explains why, this phenomena of women kind of building a man and staying with him and helping him build his career, and then he trades her in for a younger model. So if he's not wanting a woman to change, and there's that book, I think it was Attached. Was it Attached? No, it was Love Factually. It was called Love Factually. It was a social scientist researcher, and she was having a hard time, or no, she was a different kind of researcher, but she was having a hard time dating. So she did some social science research about, dating statistics. And she found that most men prize a woman and prioritize beauty and youth. And most women prioritize power and money. And it doesn't say that that's everyone, but that is the tendency. So she was kind of saying, kind of like what you were saying, if you want, if you're a man, let's say you want beauty and youth, then you better have power and money, to attract that in. If you are a woman and you want power and money and you're a man, then maybe you might need beauty and youth, like she's like, it's not fair, but that's just what the data is saying. That's all I'm reporting, don't kill the messenger. So
Yeah.
it's interesting to learn things like that. And then you look at biological things. Like I read that the egg, when the sperm comes in, if it's damaged in any way, after it starts to go into the layers of the egg will actually repair the sperm before it enters in and accepts it to create a baby. So it just, again, women's tendency to want to fix a man before, or during the courtship process, before she actually procreates with him or marries him. It seems to be, it can be like a biological urge, especially as nurturers. And women in this book too, of the Love Factually, it was saying, women tend to be more forgiving of looks. Like they're not as, they're not, that's not their primary thing with a man. That's not what they're primarily attracted to. However, I kind of feel like in my partners too, like I put a lot of energy into my mental, physical, and spiritual health. That's a priority for me. So I desire a partner that does the same, because it's a lifestyle choice. And so it's like, if you like the way that I look, or you like that I'm healthy, then you do the same thing, like give me that back too, because that is a priority of mine. So it's interesting that, that sometimes we can be mismatched in that way too. And like I said, it's not always fair, what's out there, but it's what we're aware of and what we're working with. And same as you, I've also heard so many stories about people's, starting off with one intention and ending up in another. And I guess that does speak to, perhaps soulmates. It does speak to perhaps, people meet in different ways. Some people just know instantly. Some people, they start with friends and they develop into that. I know that when I look back, my healthiest relationships were friends. We were friends first and we developed into a relationship, but those were not the ones that lasted. They didn't last because and always in those relationships where I started as friends, we ended as friends. I lost my passion. I lost my physical attraction. So at a certain point, even though conventional advice says like friendship is a primary thing, like this or that or another, if I don't feel some kind of sexual charge in the first, let's say, few times, a couple of times that I've been on a date with this person or known this person, I'm probably not gonna consider them as long-term potential.
Yeah, typically that,
not myself.
Yeah, typically that is true. First of all, chemistry can't be manifested. It can grow. And what happens is the kind of chemistry that normally grows is the chemistry of love and respect. And if it gets big enough, it actually becomes a turn on for that person or those people. So I've seen that, but it's typically not you look at somebody, your heart's pounding and you get all Twitter pated, as I call it from Bambi, you get all like heart's racing and sweating and stuff like that. It's typically not that, but that leaves within 3 months to 2 years anyway. So the baseline is finding somebody that you're attracted, and it's like women are to find somebody that they are 60% attracted to, because when they get any more attracted to a man or their partner, then what happens is they start making bad decisions. They don't fully be themselves. They're just like, they don't say everything they want to say. They don't do, because when there's too much chemistry for women, we hold ourselves back. We hold ourselves in. We don't share as real and authentically as we want. When we're with somebody that is about 60% attraction, we can like hang out in sweatpants and t-shirt on the couch, and we don't care. Like when they come in, they're like, we're not primping our hair. We're not like making sure our makeup's just so. We're like, this is me. And you know what? Tonight, when we go out, I'm going to have the 5-inch heels and the net stockings and all that stuff to go out to dinner. Mm-hmm. But right now, I'm relaxing in my home or in our home, and I don't need to be all dressed up for it, you know? And it's like, so whereas, you know, it's like most women are like, oh, I just want the 100% thing. But it's like most of the time when we get that much chemistry, the personalities don't align. Like I've seen, and I've also experienced where there's so much chemistry, all you have is like the sexual animal magnetism, but you don't have nothing to talk about. Then you have the friends that you talk and talk and talk. You're like, oh my God, why can't I be attracted to you? And then there's the middle ground of like finding somebody that you're just attracted to enough, and you have so much stuff stimulating your mind and your conversation with each other. And then you have your needs met of like, maybe you need supported in your work or your emotional needs or whatever. It's like, and you figure out what those things are, and he's supplying those. And it's like the best friend, the bond that happens in that actually the friendship holds relationships together, and what you have in common and the things that you do together and all of that stuff. It's not the love. Mm-hmm. You can love them all you want. I've loved somebody so much, but there's just no way that love would have kept us together. But because the friendship and everything, and I've split up with all of my boyfriends as friends, because I realize I'm very careful on who I choose. I'd rather be single than to be with the wrong person. And it's like, we're always so much in a rush to get to be in relationship that we make a lot of mistakes along the way. And then we have to take responsibility for like, I kind of knew he wasn't the right one, or I knew she wasn't the right one. And it's like, but I wanted to be in a relationship. I watched one of my friends, he got in relationship. He knew he wasn't attracted to her, but he hadn't been in a relationship for 6 years or 5 years. And he was like, I just want a relationship. And then he never thought about, he doesn't know how to get out of a relationship. So then he was like stuck in there then he was stuck in that relationship for 5 years because he didn't know how to get out, until it got so bad that he finally was like, he had to get out. It was just like, you know, it's like, we have to stop just questioning ourselves to the point where, you know, we stay in something that's unhealthy. I'm not saying get out as soon as one thing goes bad. Like I know people who do that. There's a happy medium to go, okay, this has been going on for this amount of time. This person is this kind of person. Can I live with that for the rest of my life and really take it in? Like I love telling couples, like, take a week-long vacation with your female friends for the woman and male friends for the man, away from each other every year. In that time, you get some alone time, you get perspective, you come up back, you get a honeymoon, you get to talk about, wow, I was really looking at our relationship and feeling into it and going, this is what I'm needing now. I didn't even realize it until I had space, or I need this to shift, or I was wondering if we could do this together more, or this is what I'm really loving about our relationship right now. Can we feed this part of it more? Can we, you know, and then all of a sudden it's like, there's more flames and there's more fire in a beautiful way, because then we're able to share our blind spots when we're together all the time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So what do you think is, because, you know, when you say things like being like, people have a hard time being authentic, like that, for me, that's sort of foreign, because I'm like you, I really don't have a hard time being authentic at all when I'm meeting someone or dating somebody. And then I just wonder, you know, for me, it's more about like, oh, should I tell them all of that on day one or date two or whatever? You know, that's more my edge. what are the things, or are there things that you feel like maybe you should hold off until, they've made you made a little bit of a connection, and maybe you don't need to tell them about all that yet? I'm talking about things like your divorce, or, the baggage you have, or the ex, or, these sorts of things.
Well, first of all, I think it depends on how you guys are connecting.
Mm-hmm.
Is the conversation staying surface? Is the conversation starting to go deep? Mm-hmm. If you ask a personal question, do they respond right away and really comfortably? Do they show that they're uncomfortable? It's not a, cut and dry. I know some people who say, get everything out on the table on the first date and you'll know in 15 minutes if he's your or she's your one. Mm-hmm. That's only one part of it, them answering those questions. When do you tell them that you're divorced? I would definitely say in the first 2 dates, because some people don't want to date a divorced person. Mm-hmm. When do you tell them you have children? On the first date, if not before. In your bio, it should be there, or before you meet up, they should know you have children. That's vital. That's not going to change. You're not going to send them away to boarding school unless they're already there. These things need to be said first and foremost.
One thing I noticed online that's very controversial is that, and I say controversial, and that there's really a divide in how people feel about this, is some people feel like you should not date somebody until they're totally divorced. But if you're like me, my divorce took 4 years to be final. So, and it was nothing, it was beyond my control, right? So sometimes you have very litigious people that you're dealing with. And of course there was legal separation, immediately, but I didn't personally have this experience where anybody was hesitant to date me, even though I wasn't fully divorced. But I've seen it online where a lot of people are like, no, don't date her, don't date him if they're not fully divorced. They're still married, that sort of thing. How do you feel about that?
Well, it has nothing to do with how I feel about it. It has to do with what he or she feels about it.
Well, like, first, I should say, what's your process?
If you have a belief, or the person you're dating has a belief about that, they need to know ASAP so they can either work through it, mm-hmm. or you can find out if they're bothered by it, because if they're bothered by it, it's a no-go. It's not a cut dry, like, oh, it's because everybody's going to have a different response. If somebody came to me personally and said, we separated 2 years ago and we're in the process of getting a divorce, and we've not lived together for 2 years, and we only see each other when we are passing the kids to each other, and that's the only time, and we only talk when we're talking about the kids, and there's no chance of us ever getting back together. If I go out a few more dates with them, if I really like them and go on a few more dates and I really see that he's a truthful person, I really feel into, like, he's authentic, then it's like, okay, well, let's see where this goes. But if I start seeing yellow flags and red flags that he's hiding things or he's lied about things, I don't make excuses for them. I just say, if the person's willing to lie about this or hide things there, he might not be telling the truth about the ex. And that's something that we need to go into our gut and go, is this okay with ourselves? Is this better for my higher self? And when I'm dating, I'm always looking at the big picture. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at not just right now, but will I be able to handle this kind of personality and behavior 10 years from now? I don't even know who I'm going to be in 10 years from now, but being the person I am right now, is this the kind of person that I want to be with in 10 years from now? Like, I dated somebody that was very particular, very persnickety, very, had to have things that way, their way. And as we got to know each other, I realized, like, I would have never chosen that kind of person for my life. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't say that those were the things that, made us call it off, mm-hmm. because he's still one of my closest friends and he's still all of those things. Mm-hmm. But I learned that I could accept those things, and I didn't realize, fully how much they affected me, though, until I took time and space away from him. And I was like, ooh, I don't know, and been around people who were always saying yes to me to doing this and doing, because he was always saying no, like, no, I don't want to do that. No, I don't know. No. And he always had, and finding out realistically, like, can I handle this realistically? In love only goes so far. Then it's like, can we handle all of the personality quirks and things? Can you accept them fully and live with them abundantly? Like almost celebrate even the things that you're not, you have to be at peace going that this person's never going to change this. Am I okay with that? Like, can I deal with that? Can I deal with, like, what I had to ask myself with him was, can I deal with the fact that he's always going to question anything new that I try to bring into the relationship?
Isn't that kind of a man thing to do? I mean, not anything, but just like in general to Mama Gina talks about this. She's like, if you have a big desire, if the feminine has a big desire and it's worthy, usually the man will say no and he'll protest. She talks about that in her book too. And then you're onto something, and eventually he'll kind of like come around to it. But are you saying?
I'm not saying all men are anything. A lot of people, it's like, if it's not really, it's like, because even with all the books I've read scientifically with male brains and female brains, it's not always so cut and dry.
No,
it's just
so
I went on. So after that guy and we broke up, I dated somebody who was he loved all my ideas. I'd say, do you want to go to the beach? Yes. Do you want to go get lunch there? Oh, that would be awesome. You want to go? And I was like, whoa, blew my mind. So he wasn't that way at all. Yeah, sure, that was at the beginning.
I was going to say, did he stay that way 6 months after?
Right. But it was just like, but I know that, I've dated men that are more curious and just stays with that curiosity of wanting to go out and do new things all the time. And he definitely he definitely didn't fit the bill of like never wanting to do new things. He was always wanting to new and different things and stuff like this. I would bring home something tantric. He's like, okay, let's try that. I'd say, hey, I found out about this movie. Oh, that's great. I thought about this theater thing. He's like, awesome. And then he would have a list of things that he would show me every week and go, do you want to do any of these? And so not every man or every woman fits into the boxes that people like to fit people into just because of their sex.
Yeah, I think there are tendencies though, and being somebody who's bisexual and dated both men and women, I would say that it's more common with men to have them kind of, what's the right words? Kind of see women as almost like a subtle sense of ownership. And it might be just the way the roots of marriage, like why legal marriage was created. And with that sense of ownership is like picking you, like, again, a dating app, picking you out on this dating app and being like, oh, you're perfect for me, when they realize that you are not what they perceived fully. And then they want to change those things about you, right? Or they pretend to be what you want. And then you go 3 months in, 4 months in, and now they're trying to change you. Or now suddenly 4 months later, they have a problem with this piece of you that's always been there, right? But it's like, what were you thinking? Like, I've showed this to you from day one, but I feel like our society has set up this patriarchal structure that, whether it's conscious or unconscious, men feel entitled, to women on a certain level as like ownership. And of course women can feel like they own their partner too, with marriage, and they can dictate and everything like that. Like, I know women who even dress and pick out all their clothes for their partner and tell him he has to wear that and not that, and all this kind of stuff. And it's even considered like cute and charming, but so there's this level of like codependency and enmeshment. But then I feel like there's this other patriarchal thing that I've never experienced with the women that I've dated. They're kind of just like, cool, like I want to get to know you kind of thing, but I haven't necessarily been like, you're perfect for me. And then, you know, and then like kind of like, I'm supposed to do this because I'm their partner or I'm their person or whatever else.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I've had a completely different dating life than most women.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to date really good men, or I'm in relationship, not dating. Dating is completely different, but
Mm-hmm.
the men that I choose to be in a relationship are really good men. And so I've never 3 months into a relationship had this experience where I'm like, oh, wait, you're not accepting me for this. You're not accepting. It's like, I've not had that. I've had one relationship that 9 months in, we had to have a conversation over him wanting a little bit of what you're talking about, a little bit of like all of his insecurities and jealousies were coming up and stuff like that. He was trying to contain me. And I was like, not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have to have a conversation about this.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to figure out how to work out the relationship. Was it going to end, or were we going to tweak it a little bit where it worked for both of us? And we decided to do the tweaks to work it out. And part of me looks at the tweaks that we did. I'm like, wow, being the person I am now, I wouldn't have done it. But back then it felt okay to do. But it's just like the moment, you know, I think the only thing I can say is like, I'm just, what is it? A kid goes through their curious stages of always asking questions at what, 2 or 3 years old. I don't think I ever got out of that phase. So I'm always asking questions. So it's like, so they get to know me and I get to know them. And we're always doing that especially at the very beginning and as we get deeper into the relationship. But it's like not a nonstop thing. It's just like every once in a while a question shows up.
Mm-hmm.
And then we work it out in that moment. So there's just so much known in those first 6 weeks. That's like, we kind of know. What's really interesting in all of my dating years, I've only had one man not get through those 6 weeks. Like he quit, you know, because most men love vulnerability. Most men love a woman just like that will share all of themselves and all the stuff. And when we get into fear and we get into all this stuff, it's like, it kind of confuses them, but it also kind of leaves them with, I'm curious because, you know, she's beautiful or she's sexy or she's hot, so I want to stay with it. But there's some part of, because like they say, like men decide in the first 30 seconds or so if she's even an option.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so she might be optional for a booty call. She might be an optional for dating. She might be an option for life. But he kind of subconsciously decides that in the first 30 seconds. And it's like, can that change? Probably, but that's going to be time spent together to figure out if it can. But a lot of times they've said from the scientific data that most men don't change their minds. They can, but most time they don't. So for me, it's just like, that's why I think like so many people come to me and they're like, they have a sex issue, but what they have is really, what we work on is a communication thing. And then when we get through the communication, there's no sex problem.
Yeah, because sex is communication, right? It's like that's all, they always go together, sex and communication.
Yeah, it's like once you start freeing yourself from all your secrets and all your hiding and all this thing and not saying what you really want to be saying, all of a sudden your whole entire being goes, oh, you can relax and you can be elated and excited. And then you start talking about more desires and your fantasies. And all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, let's go down that path, because now you have space for it because you told them the thing that you've been hiding for so long. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm not hiding that. And then you feel free.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people are afraid to be alone, though. Like you're saying, you'd rather be alone than be with the wrong person. I think a lot of people are afraid to be alone or very uncomfortable with it, because then you have to be with yourself too, right? And I also think that there's a lot of scarcity mindset too. And you know, when there's scarcity mindset, it's like, oh, I shouldn't let it all hang out. I shouldn't show everything that I am because I might lose this person, as if we believe there's not somebody, you know, more aligned coming down the pike, and there's 7 billion, almost 8 now billion people on the planet. There's a lot of options out there, you know. There's a lot of options out there just logistically, statistically, right? You only need one one person to be in a relationship. Some people need more than that, but you know, you really only need one person to not be alone. And yet, like, people go on dating apps and they think that there's so many options, and they don't realize, you know, that a good portion of those folks are psychopaths, narcissists, avoidant attachment disorder, undateable, you know, dishonest, like whatever else. That, you know, that's another thing I think from that book, Love Factually, is that, you know, I think she said there's like a certain percentage that just is not really interested in being in a relationship or being really authentic, and they're the ones that are always on the dating app, right? Like they're the new other people, you know, the new women come and they just got out of a relationship or whatever, and it can kind of like jade you. But a lot of those folks on the dating app just aren't available. And I feel like I can't do dating apps anymore, because it's just like I feel like I'm doing free training, free communication skills training, free like therapy, that sort of thing. And I'm like, or it's just taking up so much time and energy to, like you say, ask the questions and like sort through all of this stuff. And so the only time I'll go on is if I have no expectations for anything, and I just want to play around with communication, you know, or make like connections, no expectation, and or I have some extra time on my hands. But so I'm not going to say that I had all bad experiences. I still keep in touch with some folks that I met on dating apps. They're still in my life today. So, you know, it's like that can happen. But I feel like I've talked so many men off the ledge who've been like irritable or resentful or even lashing out at me because women aren't responding to their messages, or they got ghosted, or they're this or they're that. And I'm just like, okay, well, think about the way that you approach me, or they'll say something that's like totally off color, and I'll like tell them why it's problematic and how women are probably responding to that. You know what I mean? But I think that they have the perception that all of these women on this dating app are available and eager to date. And that's just not true. There's so many people, both men and women, that are on there because their relationships on the rocks and they're just scoping it out, or they want some attention, or they want somebody to text them. They have no interest in ever meeting up, you know, that sort of thing. And when they realize that, they're like, oh, okay, maybe I'm not being rejected. It's just that she was never really fully available in the first place, you know?
Yeah, I had to learn a long time ago on dating apps. Not give therapy, do not give advice, do not do any of that, because that would just drain the heck out of you. If they're not conscious enough to meet me where I need to be, I just say, this is not a good match. Thank you so much. And gotta go. And then
I guess that's the thing.
I unmatch them within an hour so they have time to actually read that, because I've had the same thing. I've had students want to date me. I'm like, no, you're my student.
Yeah.
Like, because like you're my student for a reason. It's because you're at a certain place in your life that you're wanting to learn all this stuff, where I was however many years ago, and I'm still learning and growing, but I'm at the place where I am now. And it's like, so we all need to set boundaries with ourselves to go, I'm not allowing myself to go down that road. It's like one of my girlfriends watched me swiping. This was about 4 years ago. She was watching me swipe. She's like, you didn't even read their bio. You go so fast. I said, I'm reading their energy. I'm not reading, like, I will read their profile if their energy is good, but it's just left. Oh, maybe a right. Let's read down. Oh, there's nothing. Swipe left.
Always swipe left if they don't have anything.
You know, and it's like, if you're not willing to say something, like some guy the other day on his profile was like, cute guy here. What do you want? You know, it's like, really, that's all, you know, but it's like, really owning our own boundaries. If you're going to start being a fixer upper, if he's going to start, but you're going to start by fixing him, guess what? That's going to be your
no, goddess, please don't misinterpret. It's not that. It's just my kindness of like, oh, you poor thing. Like, I am going to give you this and it's going to help the collective. And then I'm out, you know, like, boop, done. Like, I don't date these guys. I don't go out with them, but I feel like the dating apps in general it's a lot of those folks. They're lost. they're sad. They're trying to make connection. They don't know how to meet people, you know, like, I don't feel like that's where, maybe at one point the conscious people were there, but I haven't found that, you know, in the last several years.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, and it can be time, because you got to sort through a whole, it's like, okay, you go to a movie theater, not even a movie theater, because that's a certain movie, so it might attract a certain kind of people. You go to the grocery store, and you go through the grocery store and you try to find somebody that you're compatible with, as opposed to going to like an ecstatic dance event, right? It's like, that's how I feel about the dating apps these days. It's just like going to the grocery store, and it's like so many different aisles to sort through, and I just don't have the patience. It's like, I would rather, you know, go to like, you know, the very specific place that I already know, you know, Whole Foods. I don't even shop at Whole Foods, but like somewhere that's like, you know, that,
Exactly what I was thinking. Like, what store are you in? Are you in Trader
yeah,
Joe's? Are you in Whole Foods? Are you in
I switch. I go, you know,
Safeway?
Costco for
That tells you
convenience.
something about the person too.
Yeah. Yeah, well, right. I mean,
And are you in the organic section, or are you in the alcohol section?
oh my gosh, I'm so picky right now. I'm like, but I'm not mad at it. Like, it's just like, that's, you know, I just don't have patience to even go through those things. And like you're saying, when a guy shows up, I mean, I still get DMs in my Instagram, and now, you know, they have a separation. So like, there's people that aren't following you and you're not following, and their messages go somewhere else. So I
Right.
don't you know, I don't always read them, but sometimes I pop in there to see what's in there, because sometimes it is generally like somebody I met somewhere and they're trying to connect or whatever else. Um, but, and I'm not talking dating, I'm just talking in general, like, you know, I met
Yeah.
somebody somewhere. But especially recently, like, I've had some men doing this thing again where they're not sexually harassing me, because that used to happen years ago, but they come in and they're like, you're gorgeous, or I just have to tell you you're beautiful, or whatever else. And I'm always confused about, like, is that supposed, this is my business account, you know, like, does that happen to men? Do women reach out and like talk about that sort of thing with their business profile or their business account? And then what are you supposed to say to that? You know, I don't answer those at all. I just let them be. But it's just like, I'm just curious about, especially when they don't have a picture, it's a private account, and they reach out to a woman who's very public and putting herself out there, right? And what is, I mean, and this is, I hope there's some guys that are going to watch this so that maybe they can see how that could be problematic, right? And for them to put that compliment out there and be like, oh, what a bitch, she didn't respond. There's nothing to respond to. You don't know who he is. You don't know what his intentions are, because he didn't say that. He's not shown anything about himself. I've actually had a more than one handful of times a man reach out again on Instagram and full on ask me out. Would you like to go to dinner? Would you like to do this? Would you like to? And I'm like, who are you? I don't even know who you. And then I tell them, like, I don't mean to offend, like, one, I don't answer anymore, but back in the day when I had more energy, and more maybe anger at the patriarchy, but I would say to him, like, you have to understand where I'm coming from. I don't know what you look like. I don't know anything about you. I don't know your real name. I don't know what you like. I don't know anything about you. And how could I possibly answer that question? And he's like, well, then how do we get to know each other? How do I even know if I want to get to know you? Like, this is, and so it's like, I have to tell them that these cold calls on Instagram or, you know, whatever, they just don't work when you've not shown yourself. And I think, like, if you're trying to meet somebody on social media, I think, especially if you're a man trying to meet a woman, probably you should start by like public comments, like following her content, right? And maybe making public comments, or starting the conversation publicly, rather than going into the DMs and seeing, you know, again, you're saying, so you can read his energy instead of just that one comment and then expecting something. And I found that's one way that men often expect something from women. They're just like, of course she should talk to me. Of course she should answer the message. Of course she should be at least polite to me and answering my question. For me, it's like, it's annoying, right? It can bring up this annoyance. And now I'm like, oh, here's another one, delete, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't know if, I have no idea. I don't think like a man, but I don't know if they have an expectation of us responding to those. I mean, women, when we write, we tend to have an expectation that somebody will write back. I don't know if men has that thing in their brain that they have an expectation.
Fishing and casting.
Now, I do know that some men will. I've had men that definitely did have expectations that kept writing me like, "Hey, I wrote you. Will you respond?" Da, da, da. And it's like, you give me that energy, I won't respond, and I'll just block them because it's like, I don't want to deal with you. But it's just like, and some men I remember talking to one man about this years ago, and he said, sometimes I just find somebody beautiful. I have no expectation of anything. I just want to tell her. Some men are like that. I can't speak for all men, but some men are just like, I just want to tell this person she's beautiful. And whether he has he didn't have an expectation, but other men may. And I'm glad that they have those filters on Instagram, because it's like, I get it on Meetup, because I have 5 or 6 different groups that that I manage, and then on Instagram. But it's like, yeah, I find it fascinating also, and there's another question I ask people in the dating thing is like, are you a private person? Like you said, you're out there, you're upfront, your page is not probably private, I'm assuming, and all the stuff. And it's like the same with here. I'm pretty much, I can be an open book. There's places and times in my life that I haven't been, but I'm mostly an open book. And it's like, I let people know, if you are a private person, I cannot date you.
Yeah.
Because if you're not going to be okay with me posting things about our relationship, because I'm a relationship and intimacy coach, if you're not okay with me posting photos of us, and if you're not posting photos of us, there's something with me that just goes, this isn't going to work. Because if you don't have to be as open as I am, but if a person's not to what I can consider in my mind a medium sense of openness, then we're probably going to clash anyway, because there's going to be things that they don't want to share. Like I've noticed, going back to signs and stuff like that, I've noticed I won't date most Taurians because they're normally very private people. Most of the Taurians I've met, female and male. And it's like, it doesn't mean they're all across the board that way, but it means like we normally get along great as friends at a certain distance. But other than that, it's like, what I find is like, they're not as open as this little Sagittarius self that I am. And I end up wondering what's going on, because they're not as open and as free as I am, which in a relationship, it's like, I would have a challenging time with. And they're like, please honor my privacy. I'm like, you're asking me to be something I'm not, and then I would have to ask you to be something you're not. So let's just agree to agree to disagree and not be in an intimate relationship. And know that there, it's like, I remember the first time one of my close, awesome, beautiful friends in LA, she's a Taurus. And I was like, I remember the first time I wanted to post a photo, I'm like, of us. I was like, oh, is she going to be upset? Like, and I'm like, okay. I don't remember. It was like 20 years ago. So I don't even remember if I asked her, if I posted it. And she had to okay it, so she actually okayed it. And, so to me, that meant she was okay. And then I wrote her later on when I thought about it, I'm like, oh, crap. I'm like, was that okay? She's like, yeah, fine. But it was like, I was like realizing I had to be very, anytime, I went to post a photo of her after that, of us, I was like, I thought, oh, I should probably ask her first. And it's like, and eventually after 3 times or something, she was like, just do it. Like, and so then I had the blanket permission.
Yeah.
That's the interesting thing about the privacy thing, and people who are have their private page, no photos. I'm like, sorry.
Well, it also just really brings up social media again as a way to look at authenticity. You know, it is a factor there too. And I get that some people are more private, and I also get that some people don't have business profiles, right? So now my network, my friend group tends to be entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs typically want people to share their photos. They want to be seen. They want to be, you know, because it's going to drive some traffic to their page where they're selling a service or a product or both or something. So that tends not to be as much of an issue, but I do have some friends still who are like, do not post anything of me unless I approve it because it's sacred. You know, what we were doing there was sacred, that kind of thing. And I'm like, okay, that's a whole other level, right? I was private on social media before I had a business. And I didn't like it. I didn't like having to be so private, but it was because I like to be self-expressed, but it was because I was working with kids that had severe mental health issues. And it's like, you want them to know, and their families and everybody else to know as little about you as possible, because you could be in danger, right? If you ended up making a child abuse report or, you know, something like that. And so it was really freeing to leave that job and shift into my entrepreneur self. But surprisingly, or maybe not so surprisingly, it was my family really protested at me being open. And to this day, I have very few family members that are still following me or connected with me on social media. I've been told that they're ashamed of me because I talk about sex, and I'm like, well, it's part of my professional wheelhouse and something I was trained in, and that's more to do with them. But I don't, you know, I don't take it personally. Like, they still love me or whatever. That's their issue. They don't want to be associated with somebody that shows up in that way. And so it's like, that's, you know, that's interesting. And recently I just posted a photo of me dancing, you know, like dressed in lingerie and a sweatshirt or whatever, and lost a chunk of followers, which was interesting. And I'm like, oh, I wonder who those followers were that left, you know, but I'm like, it's still, you know, it's triggering people. Again, I don't take it personally. It's just interesting. It's like, interesting. I've had what you're talking about, the social media, like being private or not, or more open. I've definitely experienced that in past relationships. I've also experienced where I'm dating somebody and what he's posting on social media is not authentic to who I know him to be. And that bothered the shit out of me, because I'm like, and it wasn't even about like he's misleading people or whatever else. It was just like, if that mismatch is so big there, where else is it? You know, where else is there some dissonance, some cognitive dissonance or whatever else? And so I get that there's a certain curated maybe content that you want to put on a social media page if you have a business, but he doesn't even have a business. This is just his personal, you know, page. So I was like, that's really interesting. And that really bothered me. And then there's like you said, the thing about, are they posting pictures of you? If you're in a relationship and you're committed, are they posting pictures of you? Or do people on the outside world know about you? You know, these sorts of things. And I think if more people actually paid attention to that, they probably find that their partners were less likely, you know, or they're more likely to know if their partners were straying. A lot of cheating has happened just because of that very thing. People are saying, oh no, I'm a private person, but really they're just not wanting their other options to know that they have someone at home, right? That they're already in a relationship with.
Could be. Yeah. I mean, I knew a couple that she well, it doesn't really matter what she did, but he was a stripper. And so, you know, in person, you very much knew they were a couple. But on her page, there was just a ton of like pictures of them that she would post. But, you know, it was very clear that she's not allowed to tag him because he's supposed to look single because of his career. Mm-hmm. And so in that aspect, I look at it and go, well, if you know him, except for I will say this, the first month that I ever knew him, in all the conversations we had, I never knew he was in a relationship. So I found that fascinating. Yeah, like there was never a time that he brought it up ever in all of our conversations. It wasn't until I was walking somewhere months later, he disappeared. And months later we were walking and all of a sudden I saw him with a woman and we ended up talking and found out they've been together for a year and a half and stuff like this. But, but it's very clear on her page, they're definitely together. On his page, there's nothing about her. It says he's single, but I feel like that was a career move that they've chosen to do, that he's not tagged, stuff like that, because if everybody knew he was in a relationship, women might not like him so much.
And I think the key word is they, right? They chose.
But it's just like, it's, yeah, because it's clear that she's not tagging him. So they've made that decision. And it's like, so it's, in other aspects, like, when there's no reason to be private, it's a different story. I mean, it could mean any number of things. It's like, and not to assume that why, if somebody's private, it's because they're wanting to keep their options open or to, they're dating somebody else and they might be. And that's something to have a conversation about and to really feel into your gut if you're okay with it and you like their answer in your full being.
So there's this one situation where the guy was telling his girlfriend, oh, I don't post about our relationship because it's going to be bad for my career. And yet there's all these women that would be commenting on his posts. Oh, you look so hot, this and that and another and blah, 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 and all this stuff. And he would tell her, oh, that's just like, I have like this pod of friends. Those are like my homegirls. And that's what we do. We just like, kind of like sister goddesses, I guess, where you're like upwriting or whatever. And he's like, that's just what we do. No, he was sleeping with 5 of them later on, that she found out. And it's just like, had she been more, I think it was bothering her, but had she been more insistent, and she was pretty private too about what she posts personally. So she wasn't really posting him either. But he was able to get away with this for a long time because of that. So I agree with you. It's not like that's the only reason is because somebody's wanting to cheat, but it's very interesting. It's very interesting when people are, they move differently in the world, and I don't know, it's still kind of new, this intersection in relationships, because, we have introverts and extroverts and they can get along fine. I like being with extroverts because I don't have to do the talking at parties. I can go and experience all the social, stuff, and I can have people come up to me, but I don't have to like start any conversations or expend so much energy. And when I'm with an extrovert, they're kind of just leading the way and I get to, kind of, they blaze the trail. So it's interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I've never really looked at that so much as an introvert extrovert, because like I'm an introvert. Most people think I'm an extrovert. They're like, but you share so much on social media. I'm like, I'm an extrovert that way. I'm not and I'm an extrovert on the dance floor. I'm an extrovert when I'm teaching, but all the other times I'm an introvert. And it's like, for me, it's like, I remember one of my exes said to me, it's like, from the very first time we ever went to a party together, he goes, you're one of my favorite people to go to a party with, because he's just like, we go, you go this way, I go that way. We both have our experiences. We pass, say hello, how's things going in the middle, and we go the other direction. But at the end of the night, we go home together. We have lots to talk about then. It's like, you're not concerned about who I'm talking to and what I'm doing, and if I'm doing something wrong, and you're off doing what you're doing, and I'm not concerned about you. And it's just like, there's so much freedom there. And so there's a lot of people who don't trust their partners to do that. So they're glued together the whole entire time. And then you really don't have that much to talk about, unless you like to talk about, if you're a gossipy kind of couple. But it's like, it's really great to have your own conversations to come back together and go, oh my God, I had such great conversations and I got fed and nourished by all these amazing people. But if you glue yourself together the whole entire time, then it's like, you don't have that experience. You've already listened to all the conversations that the other one had, or that you all had, and stuff like this. But there has to be trust as the foundation of relationship. If you don't trust them, then it's a person that you really shouldn't be with. And it's like, that's the key thing. It's like, and coming back to, when you see somebody moves differently and works their life differently than you, I ask myself the question, will I be able to live with this kind of person for the rest of my life? If the answer is no, then you better be honest with yourself and honest with the other person. And instead of keeping the relationship going, find a way of easing out of it gently, without blaming, without pointing fingers, caringly, and go, I adore you. I think you're amazing. I love this relationship. And I'm realizing that this quality of who I am, this quality of who you are, I'm not sure later on down the road if it's going to go hand in hand together. And then you can have a conversation about it. And then you both typically come to that point of view of going, oh yeah, you're right. Like typically. And then what happens is you break up peacefully, bless you, instead of like the whole finger pointing thing, because you've had a conversation to find out what works for both of you.
Yeah, I think everybody needs a coach, a therapist, probably both, different phases of life. I just don't think, to learn these communication skills and to learn these dynamics, because I just don't think our cultures do a really good job of teaching young people this. I did not learn this stuff until I trained in it and did my own therapy, and I'm still learning. I'm at mid-age and I'm still learning, about relationships and communication. And we're always learning about ourselves, and we're in different relationships. We see different aspects that are brought out, different chemistry, different recipe that that comes out with each new person that we're with. And it's like, one person can say, oh, you have a problem with this, and the other person, that's not a problem at all, but there's something else that they don't like, or they do like, kind of like your example with the guy that shot down everything that you offered or suggested that we do. And yeah, it's very, it's no wonder that so many relationships are failing when we are going off of models that aren't the healthiest, right? For human relating, communication models that don't really work. And then, like, you've mentioned several times the importance of space and not distance, but space in your relationship, and authenticity, and exploring yourself, and then having something to come back and talk about. And I think what happens when one isn't fully authentic and they're trying to twist and morph to be what the other person wants, they are poisoning slowly the relationship. And if you insist on spending so much time together and not opening up your relationship system to have other energies coming in, and I'm not talking sexual, I'm talking about, like you said, being at a party and having other conversations and seeing what other people are up to, making connections, you are also slowly poisoning your relationship, because you're just putting too much pressure on that other person and yourself to almost like be the same person. It really comes down to emotional fusion, right? And we need this connection to survive. But so many of us have a hard time determining, and I say so many of us before we learn in other ways, determining like what is actual true connection and intimacy, and what is emotional fusion or codependency, right? And there's so many layers and levels. And I would say with this astrological transit that we just went through, Venus retrograde, especially because it's in Capricorn, which is like the patriarchal sign, and it's also, in its healthy expression, it's very, divine masculine. It's very goal oriented. It's very focused. It's very steady, secure, all of that. But it's really looking at what's real, what's true, and it's ruled by Saturn. So Saturn exposes the cracks. And this was a 2 month, almost a 40 days, I think it lasted. So many people told me they learned new layers of stuff that they thought they were done with. And it's like, damn, this pattern came up. And I'm like, I thought I was done with this. This happened. And there it was again. And for me, it was a whole new layer of that codependency or that enmeshment. And I was aided because I probably was in contact with every single relationship I've had in the past 7 years. Like somehow, we got back in touch, and it was like, whoa, it was a ability for me to see how much I've changed since each of those progressive relationships as I was unwinding from, being married to a narcissist. And I'm like, I'm just not, even the very subtle boundary violations or feeling a little pushed or controlled in those little subtle ways. I'm not even, it's like, no, done, block. I have no patience, right? No patience, no tolerance for it. So very interesting. So I guess I just share that because being a middle-aged woman, being a trained therapist, doing years and years of therapy, doing it for a living, how many hours a week, there's still always something. There's always something to unwind, right? That we can work on. And it all comes from our families of origin and the culture that we're raised in, the movies we watch, all these messages that we're constantly being media, we're bombarded with commercials.
Right. And how much time we're willing to put in to do the work on ourselves. Like it's interesting. You call like going to a party and just staying with them, you're poisoning yourself. I look at it and go, for me, it's like you're just drowning yourself in the other person. And if you have no space to just be away from them, it's like, it's like, I find like even when you and I are on the phone and we're talking, I have a different dynamic with you than I do with another sister goddess or another sister goddess. And it's like, and it's like, if you're always having somebody there next to you, like you're going to have a different dynamic and you're a different person, response who you are in a group as well. And it's like most people, when I tell them I have a shy side, they're like, no, you don't. I go, put me in a group that I'm not teaching. You will watch me be very shy.
Yeah.
No, you're just quiet. I'm like, I tell you, if I was an extrovert, I'd be walking around talking to everybody. I walk around and I'm like, oh, that person just got out of conversation. Okay, let's head towards that person because they look interesting to go talk to. Oh, there was somebody else. Oh, let's go find somebody else. And it's like, I'm looking for the one person that's not talking to somebody to have a conversation with. But it's like so many people these days, they don't trust their partners because, think about it. When we were growing up, at least for when I was growing up, there was no internet. There was no cell phones. There was no texting, so what did you have to do? You either had to entertain yourself, inside your room, either I was playing with my Barbies or I was dancing around to music like a crazy person, or I was outside building forts and hiking. And I lived in a village 9 miles out of town where I had one friend that was a long ways away that, you have to get a phone with a cord. And if you wanted to take it to your bedroom, you had to take that cord and get it really long and take it to your bedroom to have a private conversation and stuff like this. But if I wanted my friend around, I had to call them, and then we had to figure out where to meet and all this stuff. And it's like these days, it's like it's all internet. So people aren't really being taught. They don't have the practice and in relating to have conversation to, like most of my relationships have come from the dance floor. We've had an amazing dance, and then we've also happened to be in the same group afterward when we've gone out to lunch or something, or and then we're like, oh, do you want to come to this party, or do you want to go out to this, or do you want to go to have a milkshake, or all of a sudden we already have one thing in common. We see each other in a group situation, then we get one-on-one. These days it's typically almost all online. And then when you get in person, it's awkward. I met this guy at this party years ago, a play party, but and it's like we had a great connection and we exchanged phone numbers. I said, well, would you like to hang out sometime? He's like, sure. And we were hanging out. No, before we hung out, it was really funny. We got along great in person. And then we were trying to figure out how to get together, a time, all this stuff. And we were texting, and he was amazing. And finally, I'm like, I'm tired of texting. I'm not a texter. I pick up the phone, I call. He doesn't answer. I'm like, I know you're there. And then hours later goes by. We start texting again. I pick up the phone, I call, and he picks up and he goes like, hello? Huh, 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 huh. And I'm like, hey, we were texting. I'd rather thought we should just talk instead. Much easier. You know, he's like 20 years younger than me. He had never had a phone conversation. He wasn't even sure how to pick it up.
Oh,
I'm like, what? And he was so awkward and weird, whereas texting, he was so confident. But it's like, it's just the live interaction has been taken away from a lot of these younger people. And a lot of older people have gotten used to that now. And so it's awkward being around people in human form and stuff like this. And it's like, so when we get around them, people either tend to be on their phone all the time because they're not used to that much stimulation, or they drown each other. It's like, or they're on their phone until they're around people. And then it's like, they have to claim the person they're with and walk around with them all the time. And it's like, and men and women both do that. And it's just like, it's so crazy. And it's like, how can we catch ourselves to go, is this how I really want to be? Or is there a fear or a distrust, or there's something there? It's like, it's like, I'd rather give you as much freedom as possible and know that you're going to come back and that I can trust you. And if you show me something that I can't trust, then that's a different story, but it's like, we can't walk around life, distrusting everything. Then you're really saying, I don't trust myself, or I don't trust the universe. I don't trust spirit, and it's like, we need to be able to do that. And sure, there's going to be people that we run into that's not trustworthy, but then we just have to forgive ourselves for like choosing or calling that person in, look at the lessons we learned from there, and then go, okay, that's what I learned. I won't do that next time. Great. Let's move forward.
And also, like, trusting yourself enough to know that when they show you who you are, you're like, you pivot, you move to, it's like, I don't believe that everybody that we attract is like because of our energy. I just don't believe that. I don't believe that you attracted that, so it must be something inside of you. Yes, that's true. That's Carl Jung. That's the shadow. There's that dynamic going on, but I don't believe that's always the case, because that takes away this kind of like choosing our soul purpose, or certain things being aligned in a certain way. Like right now, I'm still coming out of a massive lesson with my knee going out and my implant failing, and being basically quarantined for a month. I'm like, what the hell? Actually, it's been about 6 weeks. I'm like, what the hell just happened? Like, why everything was going so smoothly in so many areas of life, and then all of a sudden, boom, like, what the heck, universe? And I'm like, and so when we say stuff like, oh, I attracted that, perhaps my spiritual not coach, but she's like a mentor, an older woman, wise woman, who said, your soul wanted this experience, and she's like, I know it's super hard to accept that. And I'm like, yeah, it's really fucking hard because I'm angry as hell, but she's like, but there's a piece of your soul that called this in. So I think that's part of the like forgiving ourselves, because on the surface, logically, in reality world, we can look and we can be like, how did you miss that? Or how did you do this? Or how did you not see this? But there's also this part that our soul, like, unconsciously signed up to have this experience.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I was meaning. I wasn't meaning like you're calling in things that you already have living inside you. I like, a lot of people like, oh, when you don't like something about somebody else, it's because of something you have in me, in yourself. And like, I don't really believe in all that, because I really can't stand it when people lie, but it's not because I lie.
Because you're a liar.
Like people that I can't trust.
Yeah.
But it's like, that's what I was meaning. Like some part of us, like I went through knee surgery a year and a half ago, completely hell. And I was out of the country, and, it's like not exactly convenient. And I couldn't go back to the US because of COVID. They told me like, oh, you have to wait 6 months. So, something, and I've learned so much about myself because of this. And so, yeah, I get like some part of our spirits, some part of ourselves called that in.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the time, gosh, I feel like
Yes.
I saw it at 9 and then it just, I don't know where the last 40 minutes went by like that. Let's talk a little bit about what people can expect from your video, because I want, to put that out there and just see how that might impact people or
Mhm.
change, because
Yeah.
we're talking about how people don't have skills these days in
Right.
relating, and you're talking about sexual relating, but it's so tied in with connection, energy, emotional intimacy. And you're saying that this is a video for that can be done as a single or for a couple. So
Yeah.
what can people expect?
I don't only work, I mean, don't actually, most of my clients, I'm not working with them on a sexual basis. They come to me for a sexual issue,
Mm-hmm.
and it turns out to be a communication thing, and then it opens up the sexual stuff.
Mm-hmm.
This particular video that I filmed was a video on all the ins and outs of Yoni massage. So this isn't for practitioners. You need to go through your training for that. It takes a long time to go through that. But it is like, if you are a practitioner, I've had practitioners fill my room with partners so they can up their game after they got trained. And it's amazing. They're like, oh my God, I learned so much that I didn't even learn it in my teacher training. Because what I've done is I've taken the best of what I've been learning and experiencing and practicing in the last 19, 20 years and put it into this video. And so what I've done is anywhere from and it is based on healing, and I've been teaching to couples mostly for the last 7 years, and that can be even two friends that work together as well. So it'd be couples or two friends that come together.
Dyads.
So right, so paired friends is how I call it. That's what it is. So basically, it's all the ins and outs of like anywhere from what happens to the women's nervous system and brain and how it functions from the time that you put it on the calendar to what happens, what do you do to set up for a yoni massage, what she may or may not go through, how to handle that, how to hold space. I really go into a section of it where I'm teaching how to hold space. So many people don't know how to hold space. I'm actually breaking it down. And because none of my teachers broke it down for me, it was something I did naturally, thank goodness. But it was just like, I realized just very few people actually know how to hold space. So I'm breaking that down. I'm breaking down like what the giver, whether it's a female or male, doesn't matter, what the giver is giving and why, what they're wearing. And so, how to set up a sacred space, how to, be there. And I go through the whole entire anatomy of the inside and out and all the different strokes that we're going to, be practicing on the inside or outside of the yoni. If you don't know what a yoni is the vulva and the vagina. And then it's going through I go through the whole entire massage, from the therapeutic part to the energetic part to actually doing the yoni massage. It's all filmed. Some of the pictures that I've put out on the internet, it shows like she's covered, but that's just because on the internet you have to, but she isn't covered in the video. It's done very tastefully. I love how they filmed it. It's so beautiful. It feels very sacred. And then what's the aftercare afterward and how to take care of her and when a session really ends, because it doesn't end when you think the session ends. And it's like, and just so much. So it's my whole day workshop. It normally is a workshop. I think I start at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning, goes until 6:30 at night. And I've put it all in, I think it's about a 3-hour video. It's amazing because like when you don't have people answering questions and talking and all this stuff, or asking questions and me answering, it's condensed down. And I had to do things differently in the video. So it wasn't like a 6-hour video. Otherwise it would have been. And, but it's all still the same content. And so I also wanted to share that on Pacific time on February 12th, I'm having a Blissful Valentine's for Couples event. It's all online. So whether you're Pacific time well, Eastern time, it would be 10:30 your time. It's on February 13th for me, because I'm in Thailand on Sunday, late morning, 10:30 in the morning. And we're going to go through different practices of touch and breath work and communication and bringing more intimacy and connection and heart opening to your relationship, so you can have this really sweet, loving kind of connection, and just be able to take those practices into your world, into your life, and practice them from then on out. So it's and then I'm going to be doing a 7-week series sometime in the near future that's going to be online, in person, and also online, not in person, pre-recorded.
The video, is it appropriate for someone who's a beginner in such a way that, like, even an adolescent girl who's wanting to really learn about her anatomy and how her vulva operates? Or is it mainly, you think it's more appropriate for adults? Because I know there's such a lack of really good, sex education for women for how their bodies work.
I would say 18 or older, just because I don't think the adolescent mind is going to comprehend and understand exactly everything that goes on in the video. So it really is for, I think, 18 years or older. You make a good point. It's like, wow, maybe, I should be I thought about teaching anatomy to kids, and it might be better for me to do a separate video just for teens that, get to know their body and how it functions, and the different types of, orgasms and sensations that they might feel, and how to touch and how not to touch, and how to ask for what they want, and empowerment. And, and I am planning on teaching a class on how to ask for what you want. And there is actually no nudity in that. And that would actually be appropriate probably for a teenager, because there's no nudity in it. You just never know how the teenage mind is going to handle it, and you don't know until later on.
Yeah. And yeah, I know it's tough, but they're all watching porn anyway. So I almost am like pro nudity in that, for that reason, so that they can actually see what real is, and how it really works. But again, it's every parent is going to have their own philosophy about this.
Right. A
But
parent is showing it to their kids. Hopefully they are being appropriate with it, meaning like they know that their child can handle it, but it's also not for group viewing. It's really for you and your partner. That's it. If there's going to be a group of people watching it, I'm asking people just to come and hire me, and I will come and do a live version of the course. It's not for group viewing. It's really made for you and your partner, or for a woman to work on themselves.
yeah, I guess that's why I asked that question, because I feel like this has nothing to do with you, but just in general, like if there were more opportunities for young girls, teen girls, the rite of passage, like in Africa, they have sengas, the village auntie that teaches the young girls when they get to be a certain age how to give themselves pleasure and how to create sexual pleasure. And then those women will teach it to their first male partner, and then everybody knows, the men know that if they're not a virgin anymore, they've learned from their first partner, it's their responsibility then to sexually please every woman that they're with, especially his wife, right? That's part of the marriage contract. So there's more of a priority, I guess, on female pleasure. And I feel like, in those societies, women have more political power, they have more power just in general in society, because they are able to be discerning, and they're not thinking that their pleasure, because who doesn't like the feeling of an orgasm? Maybe there's some people out there, but it's a lovely feeling. And even any kind of sexual pleasure, it's a lovely feeling. And women, girls, I'm pro them not thinking that it's a boy that's going to create that for them, or that they have to go be with this boy because he's cute or whatever in order to have that feeling. I really would love girls to know that they can create that themselves, and I feel like that would, just help them be more discerning about not tolerating some of these bad behaviors that are cultural, garbage, whatever that gets passed down. So I don't know. I think it's an area, maybe, I don't know, maybe that'll be me. Maybe I'll make something like that one day. I used to work with teens as a therapist, so who knows? And I really adore that time. And now I have two like young ones, I have a almost 12-year-old and almost 15-year-old. So I'm seeing how they're engaging with the world and this topic and all of that. So that's where my question comes from.
Yeah. Yeah, it's awesome. I didn't say it earlier, my company is theecstaticbody.com. So if you want to find me, it's www.theecstaticbody.com. I think you're going to put that below in the link, right?
Yeah, my VA does that after the show, and this replay get emailed out to my newsletter tomorrow. And
Cool.
I forgot to tell you, I usually tell guests to put their website. See how I have natashaedwina.com, but it's okay because you have your name there too. Sometimes the website doesn't match the name. That way.
Again, you do what?
I usually tell my guests or invite them to change their name on Zoom to their website, so that as we're talking, if you say something that somebody feels like, oh, I really want to know more about that, then they might look up your website and check you out or connect or whatever. And they know that they have it right too, but I didn't think to do that. So apologies for that. And we do have a commenter, but I can't read it. It's a different language. So who knows? They're probably saying fuck off or something. I don't know.
It might be in Thai if somebody in Thailand is.
Oh, okay. That's right. That's right. That could be. Oh, good. Well, I hope they're a supporter then. You could tell me.
No, fuck off, please. No, fuck off.
So I'm just going to assume the best. Thank you, commenter, for your support and your comments that I can't read. But yeah, thank you for being here. Thank you for having this conversation. And I'm really looking forward to your video when it comes out. And do encourage people, oh, you got in there, the Ecstatic Body. So I really encourage people to go check out your website and see, what other offerings you have going on, because you have a lot of experience. I know you to be a very authentic and honest and grounded person. And I just feel that, people, when they're doing this kind of work, it's so vulnerable. You really want to be with somebody who's experienced. You really, really need to find somebody who's been around the block a few times with this material.
Yeah, and this is what I love about my work, and it's something that I don't know if I realized it in the moment, but over the years of teaching, it's like I've gotten this feedback so much. They're like, and it's like, you hold such a safe space. And it's like, for me, it's like what I've learned is without safety, there's nothing in this work. So if I'm holding space of safety, which is what I do, what happens is that's where the healing can happen. That's where the pleasure can happen. If there's no safety, you can't have healing or pleasure. And if you do, it's only going to be on some surface level. It's not going to be that deep, rich healing, that deep, rich pleasure. And so because of my background and my history with abuse from when I was really young and healing myself through all of this and stuff like that, I realized when I hold space, I'm holding space for the whole being, for all of you to show up, all your emotions, everything like that. That's why when I work with women and sometimes couples, I get them really to emotionally release in a very safe way. I've had women come to me and go, how come you can get me to yell and scream and beat the crap out of a pillow and all this stuff, but I've gone to other people and they can't? I'm like, well, I'm not scared of your emotions. Like, all of your feelings are welcome here, because I don't feel, I've experienced all of those emotions. And so I don't repress those. I don't go around putting them on other people. But when I'm going through my own emotional releases, I own them all. And it's like, so it's a safety mechanism to just come out and just go, feel everything, be with everything, share everything, let yourself be there. And I'm holding the space for all of it to be there. And it's just like allowing for all of it to be there, because then everybody can go to their next level of the communication, their next level of pleasure, their next level of even going deeper into their pain so they can be released, so they can come back into their body, into the present moment, into their pleasure, stay in their body while they're making love, stuff like this. It's like keeping a safe space and keeping people's boundaries, keeping my own boundaries. It's huge, and teaching couples how to be with each other's boundaries as well.
I was going to say, if you're modeling that, then, for the masculine partner, which is what's so needed. It's like, that's what the research shows in my PhD dissertation research too, is that for women to really access their full orgasmic, like ultimate extraordinary sex or partner or sexual experience, it's not about orgasm. It's about the energy. It's about the safety, like safety has to happen. So
yeah. And men need to feel safe too. Mm-hmm. It's like men have to feel safe. Both sexes need to feel safe in this kind of thing, in being able to make love, to be able to have as deep a pleasure as they can. Like they both need it. But yeah, a lot of women can't even get to climax if they don't feel safe. A lot of women have never even had a climax, with a partner. Some women not even with themselves, and stuff like this. But men, when they don't feel safe, they have a hard time getting erections. They have a hard time ejaculating. They have a hard time not ejaculating. Or if it functions, it affects them so differently. And so for both partners, like if a woman is constantly berating their men or their man, it's like it shifts their consciousness, and they can't be fully themselves. Or a man does that to a woman. It's like when a man's always saying, oh, I wish you lose the baby fat, or all this stuff. It's like, well, it's like it affects the woman's psyche. And of course, then she's not going to want to make love. So you just find, you have to have a safe place, but you also have to have a safe way of speaking about what you want and need. And if there's something that you need to say that might be hurtful to the other person, find a way of saying it that you can own your part in saying it. Because if you can own your side and not make it about them, then it's much more safe.
That takes some skill and practice to get to that point, right? And so
years here I've been working on this. Yeah. And my friends and my partners have always said to me the last 6 to 10 years, they're like, one of my partners said to me when we were breaking up, he goes, I've never felt blamed by you. You've always taken responsibility. I've never had this experience in my life, and you've given me space to be able to think about things and come back. He's like, because it's like blaming just puts somebody on the defense.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's taken a long time, lots of practice. Friends, partners, practice with everyone. So,
and then also you can say something to a stranger or even to a friend that is going to be received, that won't be received by your partner, because that partnership and that sexual relationship is more vulnerable, right? It's a very sensitive space. So I think that, again, if you don't have these skills, like going to have a third party professional, it can be really, really important. And there's no shame in that. It doesn't mean that like you're not doing it right. It's just, it's a very sensitive relationship. And so if you're wanting to, work with that, most couples are going to have a third party. The last therapist that I worked with, she's like, she was a little joke that I thought was really funny. She's like, one of my clients said that after working with me, that I'll never be in an unsupervised relationship again. And it was just that idea of like, when we have that third party professional to help us navigate through those storms, it's just, things go so much better, right? Yeah. To think that we can just handle it on our own and we never need somebody outside of our relationship to help, it's like unrealistic. So thank you for your service. Thank you for your service to the planet. Thank you for being on the show. And I appreciate you.
Awesome. Appreciate you. Thank you for this. This was amazing. Can't believe we've been on here for 2 hours.
Yeah, it happens sometimes, more so with the women clients, but it's good. That's why I like, it's the feminine energy. We go where we need to go. We flow where we need to flow.
Yes, we do.
All right. Good night.
All
Have
right.
a good night, everyone.